Well, good morning, everybody. Here's my plan for the forecast video. I'm going to leave you here on this image, which was last night just as the sun was about to set, to kind of set you up for what I'm going to talk about today. We had a pretty rough weekend across the plains. Very strong winds, a lot of blowing sand and dirt and dust, plus wildfires that broke out here. In fact, you can still see some of the smoke on the image from last night where the frontal boundary stretched. And that's where a lot of cooler air and extremely dry air came in. We saw more wildfires in the northwest. We saw a frontal boundary that dipped here into the Great Lakes, which kicked off numerous severe storms producing some straight line winds. And then we have a new hurricane to be talking about. We're going to get into that in a few moments. I'm going to walk you through the next 14 days. We're going to stretch this out over the month of October into November, at least based on some of the latest model evidence I've got and maybe some of the reasoning behind it. Talk about La Niña, get into the new European long-range forecast. That's at the end of this. And then I'll finish with some stuff on South America. So again, as that front came through last night, this was something that the Storm Prediction Center picked up really well on Saturday, saying the risk on Sunday was there for these storms to pop. If you remember at the end of last week in my forecast video, we weren't talking too much about this. I just didn't think it was going to have enough moisture to do this. I was more worried about the incredibly strong winds, 50 to 70 mile an hour gusts across the northern plains that happened, including large wildfires that broke out. Now, the smoke that you see on this image last night, okay, some of the stuff that's over here was from those fires, but most of it's from the new fires or the continuing fires in the northwest, which you can just see kind of as a streamer right here following the flow of the main front. Now, that front is going to be very critical in the new hurricane that was named over the weekend. And I don't know if you remember this, but on Friday, I was saying National Hurricane Center, I agreed with them, 40% chance of developing as of Friday morning. We then watched throughout the day on Friday, getting into Friday night and Saturday morning, that the environment was a bit more ripe for development than we thought. And a lot of it had to do with the timing of a front like this or the wind shear that's eventually going to show up in this area. And I'll be honest, when I woke up on Saturday morning and saw, Milton being named as a tropical storm, I was a bit surprised. It was not nearly as well forecast for me as I did with Helene. And so we got to get into this and figure out what it's going to do. And we'll go forward from there. But real quick, I just want to show you, this is weekend rainfall. In fact, we should be able to get an update, just after 6 a.m. as I'm recording. There were the storms that were in Iowa, Missouri, Illinois. This was the storms last night. This was some of the heavy rain from Milton. We did have that frontal boundary at the beginning of the weekend going into Washington and Oregon. Outside of that, most of our precip was north. We had the front that snuck over the Great Lakes on Sunday and brought in some of this precipitation too here into parts of the Northeast, but most of the country continued its very dry streak. I did want to point out that those storms that came through this part of Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois did have some hail in them, as did the storms that came out of Ohio into parts of Pennsylvania and New York as well. So just wanted to keep up to speed on some of those reports. Right now we're over 23,000, I think, in total severe weather reports during the 2024 calendar year. But as we think about where this is going to go as we step forward, here's the cool air that's in place. We saw wild temperature swings. Mornings, for example, in parts of western Nebraska that were in the 30s, and then afternoon highs approaching 100. And now we got a few areas of frost watch that's out here. Still have the excessive heat in the west, down here in the southwest, And then you can see the new updated warnings and watches for the hurricane. This is all hurricane watch at this point, just given the lead time that's out ahead of this. Now, we are not far removed from our last high-impact event, which was named Helene, of course, that came into parts of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then wrapped itself up in the Mid-South. And I was just looking this morning. I had sent several texts to a friend of mine down in Georgia, a Rocky guy I work with, and they are estimating that in some of these counties and through here, that they may be 6 to 8 weeks out from getting their power restored. I just couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine what that would be like. 8 weeks, 2 months without power. Looking at North Carolina, again, several of these counties still have thousands without power. And if you come into, that was South Carolina. Here's North Carolina. Again, it's these counties as we push up against the Blue Ridge, which just the devastation to this area is unimaginable. And just keeping up with friends and colleagues down here, listening to what they're dealing with is it's incredible. And just amazing to see this number of people without power. So it might take a while to restore. The good news is the next system, named Milton, is not expected to impact that area. And you can thank the very large ridge that's over the midsection of the country for part of the reason why it's going to be there. But I did not expect to wake up Monday morning and be seeing this on satellite. And that's just full disclosure. Last week I was so focused on the dryness after we finished talking about the hurricane That Helene, of course, I didn't think this was going to have everything it needed to get this organized. I figured we'd have too much shear on the northern side, especially as it approached Florida. I also thought that the ocean temperatures, while ripe, we didn't have the upper level instability in this, and I couldn't have been more wrong. And I woke up on Saturday and saw the forecasts really modify and saw the National Hurricane Center really go toward a much more aggressive outlook. And we can see here some rapid intensification yesterday on Sunday into Sunday night into Monday morning, and a pretty well-defined eye out here on the infrared. So let's get in and talk about this next hurricane. So this is just a quick look. We have Kirk, which is heading toward Europe, major flood threat there. I'll show you that at the end. Leslie following, 30% chance of something coming off the Cape Verde Islands. And then you can see here that we're expecting Milton to get right over that loop current again, which has already recovered from Helene, and get up to Category 4 in strength. Now, you notice how quickly it is expected to dissipate as it goes toward Florida. And I want to comment on that, but I do not want to take away the threat when you see these numbers go 431. And the risk in parts of Florida, especially with the particular track of this hurricane, is what's needing to be discussed. Now, remember, in case you've forgotten, the cone that the National Hurricane Center makes, and this, again, this is on Tomer's website, but he's using the data from the National Hurricane Center. The size of that cone is determined by historical forecast error out at given time intervals. So, for example, 72 hours from now, the cone's width is determined by historical error, not ensemble spread. I'll show you the ensemble spread in a few moments. What I'm concerned about with this particular hurricane is that it may be able to maintain a couple of its other features, even though the winds, which is what we use in the Saffir-Simpson scale to rank the hurricane, will be dissipating. But you can clearly see Cat 4 winds 145, excuse me, but dissipating, knocking off pretty quickly here. But could it still produce the flood threat? Absolutely. Could it still produce substantial storm surge? Yes. And what I want to watch is this. Now, the coastline of Florida is highly populated. It's a beautiful place to live. And what I'm worried about is that wherever this track goes, we'll put on its right side, which will be in this direction, the most vulnerable spot in Florida, the storm surge. And I've made this case several times that we have two very important bays. There's one here and one here that are extremely sensitive to storm surge for a hurricane that's coming out of the Gulf of Mexico in this direction. So what I'm most concerned about right now is that if this shifts northwest, that will put Tampa Bay on the right-hand side of the hurricane experiencing the greatest storm surge. And some of the forecast models continue to show that that is a possibility. Now, this is the ensemble spread between the European model, the GFS, the UK Met, and the CMC. And you'll just note here that there is opportunity for this to still move back to the north and west. So I just want you to see the spread is still quite large. This is the ensemble spread. You saw a moment ago that the historic track error would include this whole area, and we just need to be very aware of what this could possibly do. Now, how strong could it be? Just take a look at the categories you see here. Take note that if you just took an average of all of these, or if you just looked at the National Hurricane Center, they've got it peaking at Cat 4, some point around landfall at a Cat 2, which would be right about here. But some of the high-res hurricane models are way up. They're up here at Category 5 in intensity. And we just need to take a look at those just for context. So I'm going to show you the HAFSB, just one of our models. There's the Yucatan Peninsula. Remember that this animation follows the center of the hurricane, so the geography will change. It's got it maintaining its intensity, probably bottoming out. I went backward there, about 899 millibars. That would be the lowest. Then you start to see as it approaches, it's up to 935. So a pressure increase would indicate a weakening system. But what I'm concerned about is that this forecast model is taking Milton north of Tampa, which would concentrate all of the storm surge into Tampa. And, if you look at this whole, well, it's probably too big of a drawing. This whole area has, 3 million people in it? And there's a substantial portion of the property that's in this area, which is highly valued, that is below, 10 to 20 feet of sea level, or excuse me, that is 10 to 20 feet above sea level, not below, but above sea level. Please don't mishear me there. And if we have large storm surge in this area, there's significant concern about the track of this system in Tampa. Now, if it goes farther to the south, you put other cities at risk, but just don't want to see this. That is, I think that is the greatest risk for Tampa should it go to the north. Let's go look at another model. This is the H-WRF. I'm going to Weather Bell for this one. Same thing, follows the center of the hurricane. There's the Yucatan Peninsula. We're out here. When's the timing of this? By the way, let me just be clear. This is Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon and evening. The H-WRF is actually not bringing this on till Thursday, but still going north of Tampa. And that's what's got me concerned. So I think that, based off of the National Hurricane Center's outlook, let's go to it here. We're looking at something Wednesday, Thursday on the timing. If I look at the super ensemble, yeah, the models are not settled on the timing of this just yet, but it could be Wednesday night into Thursday morning. What did the, here we go. Let's take you back here. This one's got, there we go. That would be midnight. That'd be midnight or 1 a.m., 2 a.m. on Thursday for a landfall based off the HAFS. The wind speeds around this, just take a look. We also have our other tropical systems we've been discussing here. What's going to be important about this as it approaches is that the upper levels in the atmosphere, like the 500 millibar heights, we've got a broader ridge that's here. In fact, let me zoom back out. I'm sorry, I went too far in. We have a broader ridge that's sitting in this area. This is the upper level low that's put down up front that'll sit right on the northern side of this, keeping it from getting into, for example, Georgia. And then if you look way high in the atmosphere at about 250 millibars, what happens is as this approaches, it ends up encountering a lot of additional wind shear on its northern, kind of its northeastern side. And as a result of that, I think we're going to see the dissipation of the system. Again, this doesn't take away anything from its impact. It's still going to be a highly impactful system. But let's, now that we've seen some models, kind of dig into some of the main risks. So if we just watch, let's get a refresh on that. There we go. Let's get a look at what the GFS is doing in terms of winds. I'm going to zoom in here in just a few minutes. But before I go any further, I just want to show you, watch the northern plains. This is around mid-month. We're starting to see greater risk of strong winds coming back into the plains multiple times as well. But let's just go right here, open this image in a new tab. I'm going to zoom in on the southeast. I'm still building all of the code to show you all these regions. But we do see a pretty broad area being affected by tropical storm force winds, in this area getting up over 40 miles an hour into parts of southern Georgia. This is going to continue to make that area, which is trying to clean up after Helene, problematic. And then you notice in Florida, this is where our greatest risk is going to be. Just as a reminder, the GFS is also taking this north of Tampa. Got to be very concerned about that. Storm surge wise, they will continue to update this. This was the 4 a.m. update. We're going to watch this all day long, but they do have a pretty broad area of 8 to 12 feet of storm surge, Tampa Bay being 8 to 12. And I think the risk is much higher if the National Hurricane Center shifts its track a bit farther to the north. And if they do that, we'll see these numbers maybe approaching 15 to 20 feet in this area should the hurricane continue to push as much water as it's capable of doing. Into the southeast, I'm just going to show you the WPC. This is going to change a lot. It's going to change day to day. We're going to look at one model right now, but this is the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, their forecast of total precipitation out of this event. And that's widespread area and through here of 6 to 10 inches of rain. What will be very difficult to predict is this region in south central Florida, just how much rainfall we're going to be getting here based off of the hurricane track. But right now, the Weather Prediction Center has got this going, the heaviest rainfall into this area. But they've still got a pretty widespread, 1 to 2 inch event coming into parts of South Carolina, Georgia, in this section of Florida. So we just need to be aware of the continued flooding threat in that area. But if you broaden this out, if we just start talking about the rest of the country, there's not a whole lot of change from last week. I mean, look at the next 7 days. In fact, look at the next 14 days. That's the European model 14-day, and this is the GFS 14-day. And we're still dealing with repeated troughs in this area and more ridging here. And that will break down. It's not. I do not see it lasting till the end of the month. But I have yet to make the call on when I think it could break down. It may not be until the 3rd week of this month that we get that happening. So again, the rest of the country, we're just going to be dealing with dry conditions and at times windy conditions and very volatile temperatures overall, especially in the northern side of this. So if we just take a quick look at what the forecast models are showing in terms of trough ridge pattern, here we go. So that gets us through Wednesday, Thursday. And this is the trough, and that is the ridge that's going to force Milton to go this direction. Okay? Behind it, we have more troughs in the Gulf of Alaska. See them continuing to form here? This trough here last week was forecast to be in Southern California by the time we got out there to 11th, 12th, and 13th. It's now much farther to the north. That changes things up quite a bit. We then see that around the 12th, 13th, 14th, I think there'll be another shot at some really cold air. This will be next Monday, right? Coming into this area, dropping the temperatures off in a big way, another frost event. And the question is will there be any moisture with it? Now, the 10 days from now, the artificial intelligence is trying to give us something different. There's a trough right in through this area, trying to kick off some precip. But I don't know. It's not in the ensembles. It's not in the operational runs. It's just in the artificial intelligence. We've just been putting it to the test for a while. Again, I get out there to the 21st of October, and I'm like, holy smokes. If that thing comes in and it dives, well, then we're going to knock this ridge out. It's going to be gone. But that's 360 hours from now. I shouldn't even be showing you this, but we're just looking at anything to change up this pattern. So that's why when we look out there for the next 14 days, we just don't see the risk of major precipitation events. So some of our high-resolution modeling, let's just get a hint as to what this is showing. Already ahead of Milton, we've got storms in Florida, the front clearing New England this morning, and not a whole lot else. Maybe some pop-up storms on the heat that's in the southwest, as you see here. This is Tuesday night, by the way. And then we're watching Wednesday. There's where the hurricane's expected to be middle of the afternoon on Wednesday, getting here by midnight. But that's the NAM view of this. All right, so 5 models real quick. European, artificial intelligence, GFS. You've already seen the WPC, and here's the MBM. I don't really need to zoom in on any of them because they're all showing the same thing. I would like to walk you through a model run, though, just to kind of get a look at what is going on. As we play this forward, this is now getting out through Tuesday into Wednesday. Could be some scattered showers. Cloud cover around the broader low here as on Wednesday night. I mean, the European model is pretty aggressive. Wednesday evening, getting the hurricane already to the coast there. Quickly goes through. I mean, this is going to be a fast event. Milton is going to, roll across Florida and be out. Probably within 24 to 48 hours, or 24 to 36 hours. And then we go into the end of the week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, there's just maybe a system next Monday. So this is when that trough dug in. There's the high pressure behind it. That's that Monday morning cold I was telling you about. The next just frontal boundary that sips through this area. And I just don't see a major pattern breakdown, not even in the European HRES. So we think about it and go out there to week 2, and we got all the models kind of across the top here. It was only the artificial intelligence that was aggressive on trying to break something down. But as it stands, the European out there looking out to date to 14, kind of shows a very similar picture. And I'm just going to repeat what I've been concerned about. I went over this on Friday. Fall drought, if it's not corrected in winter, which is rare, becomes a problem next spring. And your last 30 days in terms of total accumulated precipitation as a percent just shows these incredibly dry areas where the soil moisture levels continue to stay very, very low. We had wildfires as a result of this with each new wind event that comes through, which again, go to agweather.com and you can watch those winds very carefully. In fact, you all know you can do this, right? Just go to ag-wx.com. If you're on your mobile phone, use this one. Search by zip code here, or go here for, search by city. Like, for example, zip code 62563. That's where my parents' zip code is. You click on it, you'll get all your local forecast stuff, a broad radar. But come down here, if you're concerned about those winds, click on 10-day wind speed. So my parents' backyard, I'll tell them, look, next Sunday, Monday, got some strong winds coming in. These are sustained winds, and these are wind gusts. And you can do this anywhere in the country you want, just to look at these things. But with the dry conditions that have been in place, I'm just worried about each wind event increasing fire threat. You've got dryness all throughout the West Coast into the Southwest, most of the Missouri, the upper Mississippi, and a big section of the Ohio and then the Great Lakes Basin, extremely dry. Central and Southern Plains, Northeast. I mean, about the only spot that's been able to keep wet conditions around has been primarily because of Francine, potential Tropical Cyclone 8. I'm just kind of drawing their tracks. And then Helene. And then now we've got Milton coming through like this. So the southeastern United States kind of using the borders of the Mississippi and the Ohio as kind of the edges of that area, just continues to take on tremendous amounts of flood threat when you look back at these statistics. Temperature-wise, frost risk today, okay, for the next 7 days, forecast today for the next 7 days, here's what the low temperatures look like. So this morning, this was the cooler air behind that front, which we saw at the very beginning. It's quickly out. Look, it goes to the East Coast Tuesday, Wednesday. We get out here to Thursday, Friday, still quite cool, but a lot of warmth rebounds behind this. I just did those temperatures pretty quickly because I want to get to the highs. Here's today's highs. Look at this rebound. I mean, way up back up in the 90s, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Cool up the East Coast, hot in the central U.S., hot in the Southwest. I mean, that's a typical mid-July temperature for this part of, Iowa and Minnesota. And there's Saturday into Sunday, so very, very mild air coming in. If we look at all of the longer range models, so this is day 0 through 5, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15. The models are hinting at something day 10 to 15, but most of the next 10 days look something like this. So let's get into long range and wrap this up. Climate Prediction Center released their new week 3, week 4 outlook, which would be October 19 through November 1, looking at the continued risk of above average temperatures and below average precip for the eastern half of the country. I'm sorry, let's go back to that. And I think that they're also seeing something that I'm seeing, which is at some point in that 3rd to 4th week of October, we're going to knock this pattern out and start to drop in troughs into the west. The European model's hinting at it as well. Most of the next 30 days, from now till Tuesday the 5th, you're like, well, that's dry. But remember, this is a 30-day map. I think about halfway through it, toward the end of October, we start to break this down. And you can even see that as I slide forward and instead show you the 30-day time period of like the 17th of October through the 16th of November. Look at how things are already beginning to take a different shape. And as we get into, the month of November, we could get wet in the West Coast, very wet in the Midwest. And I think that's a possibility only because historically, when I look back, more often than not, Octobers, when there's a La Niña, look way different than Novembers. They just seem to flip-flop. And I can get into the weeds and the reasoning, but we're seeing it in the models now as well. So I just want to pay attention to that. Part of it is this. The MJO from the European model was over here, and now it's expected, I think it might pop out fully into phase 4 or 5. And that's where I'd expect it to spend a lot of time. So if you notice in the Hofmuller, this is where it currently is, sitting right on top of phase 2. But you see how this is opening up? I think spending a lot of time living in this area this winter is what we're going to get out of the MJO. And my reasoning for that is we still are talking about a developing La Niña. The issue here is that some of the new forecasts were initialized at the end of the end of September, beginning of October. And during that time frame, we saw some decrease. See the dotted line here? Some decrease in ocean temperatures indicating a stronger La Niña event coming. But then remember, right at the end of the month, and then the beginning of October, we saw something like here. We saw the trade winds fade. We saw the big blue area that extended from here to here, which indicated the cooler ocean temperatures fade. So the new model run, let me show it to you, looks like this. And now it's got, much more INSO neutral, but this is an initialization issue. This doesn't give me any new useful guidance in my opinion, because I think what we did was we just picked up on a time frame when the model was initialized that the La Niña was not continuing to strengthen. So I'm just going to go back to this. If we are looking at a November through March that has La Niña dominating, this is what history would tell us. And I'm showing you that because here's the new European model. That's fall, October, November, December. As we talked about, risk of being drier. If there's a spot that could get wet quickly in November, maybe the Midwest and maybe the Northwest. You'll notice as I go and show you November, December, January, right? That's the area that I'm seeing here and here. Could it be a little wetter throughout the Canadian Prairie? Possibly. But this, watch this line I'm drawing. That's where I've got south of it drier conditions for the most part. Take a look. See the same line? And so I'd say the models are still very much locked into a La Niña-like outlook. That's December, January, February. This is January, February, March. This is still no change in the model, really, overall. I don't think there was much change of significance at all. I'm going to keep analyzing this over this week. We'll add in the NMME, bring in some additional thought process throughout this week, and try to get a better outlook for winter. But at this point, I didn't see much of a change here. I do want to show you the temperature forecast. Let's do the seasonal temperature forecast. Yeah, again, it's overall mild south, better chances of cool north. And you're going, wait a minute, I don't even see any blue on this. I know. I'm just telling you that we will have better chances of cold air intrusions in this area. So this is where I want to finish today. We'll just keep talking about that long range throughout the week. Kirk's going to be interesting, primarily because what's left of Kirk is going to be heading off toward Europe, causing major flood threat, high wind event coming in through here. We can still see better rains in parts of Western Australia, better rains in parts like New South Wales along the coast of Queensland. This is helping to just alleviate any sort of risk of drought in those areas. Notice this. That's key. If you see this wetter conditions coming into Ukraine, this part of Russia, something's changing across the northern hemisphere that could eventually stop what's going on in the United States. But in South America, notice how wet things are starting to look. Now yesterday, still a lot of wildfire smoke, but this is what we began to see. That is the kind of convection you get when the monsoon begins. See it? And if you look, what's happening? Where's that flow coming from? The pull of moisture is coming in, giving us that typical monsoonal flow. And that's why, just like I showed you last week, the newest model runs for the next 10 days continue to show a start to the monsoon season. And that it's got it. It's coming in. There's moisture available. So that's going to change this last graphic today. This is the outlook, the latest update from Mato Grosso, which, if you're unaware, it's this state here. And in Mato Grosso, they're way behind on planting. This is the new slowest in the last 5 years start. But October, we talk about it. This is the month that progress has to be made. And with these rains in the forecast, there's going to be a lot of push to get this crop established. So it's early, but we need to watch the next 4 to 6 weeks carefully. That's all I got today. I hope you all have a good rest of your day. We'll pick this up again tomorrow. Stay safe if you're in the path of Hurricane Milton. Thanks.